Welcome to Build Mode. This is the podcast for leaders building durable advantage in the AI era. Most organizations are buying AI tools. Few are building the human infrastructure to make them work. We explore how to close the AI consumption gap, operationalize adoption, and turn community into a strategic moat. If you're accountable for turning AI capability into real competitive advantage, this is for you. Let's begin. So, Emma, today we're diving into a topic that feels like it's hiding in plain sight. We hear about burnout and anxiety being at record levels, that's not new. But at the same time, every boardroom is pushing to accelerate AI adoption. And there's this massive blind spot between those two realities.
It's a huge blind spot. It's like every conversation about work already has this unspoken mental health subplot running underneath it, right? And now AI comes in, and for so many employees, it's not this exciting new frontier, it's just another source of pressure. It's intensifying all these fears about job security, about your professional identity even.
Exactly. And the part that never makes it into the executive slide decks is that this psychological strain, it's already slowing everything down. We see adoption rates stalling out, somewhere around 15, maybe 20%.
I'm stuck in pilot mode forever.
Right. And leadership immediately points to technical complexity or skills gaps, or they say we need more training. But that's not what's really happening. The data is starting to show a direct correlation. As AI-related workplace anxiety goes up, adoption failure goes right up with it. This isn't just an HR issue to hand off. It's the canary in the coal mine for a broken adoption model.
That is such a critical point, Ethan, because the disruption, it starts way before anyone even whispers the word redundancies. The disruption is about identity. The second an AI system starts generating a report or a forecast or a marketing campaign, it's colliding with someone's professional pride and their expertise.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
Well, think about it. A credit analyst who spent a decade building their judgment around risk is suddenly just reviewing AI-generated scores. Or a marketing manager who's built a career on creative campaigns is now just evaluating concepts that an AI spat out in 3 minutes when it used to take their team 3 days. Even if their job is safe, that creates this profound sense of discomfort, of being devalued.
Right. This sense of what am I for? It's like imposter syndrome in reverse. It's not, am I good enough to do this job? It's, if AI can do this job, what am I actually good at? And that is a terrifying question for a professional to face. Can you give me a real-world example of how this discomfort manifests? What does it look like on a Tuesday afternoon for a team dealing with this?
It is, and this anxiety isn't irrational. It's a perfectly logical response to the situation. People are being put in a new model where they are still 100% accountable for the outcomes. Of course, let's consider a legal counsel, a highly trained professional who has spent years developing their expertise in contract law. Suddenly, they are asked to simply fact-check contract analysis from an AI system they barely understand. Their role shifts from one of deep intellectual engagement to what feels like a glorified proofreading task. This isn't just a change in workflow, it's an erosion of their professional identity.
The buck stops with them.
Exactly, but the agency, the control over the process, now sits with systems they didn't design and don't fully trust. When your psychological safety drops like that and your identity feels threatened, the safest move is to do nothing. So this anxiety becomes the invisible brake on adoption.
And that break shows up in ways that companies are constantly misinterpreting. They see these symptoms, adoption rates stuck below 20%, AI projects trapped in perpetual pilots.
Or shadow AI. Teams just routing around the official tools because they feel too slow or like they're being watched.
Totally. And leaders look at all of this and they frame it as change fatigue, and it's not. These are not symptoms of fatigue, they're behavioral signals. They're the signs that the human operating layer for AI was never actually built. People are just protecting themselves.
Change fatigue is such a convenient, lazy diagnosis, isn't it? It basically blames the employees for not being resilient enough. when in reality, the rollout model itself is what's generating the anxiety.
So let's talk about that model. Why do these traditional AI rollouts actually make things worse? Most of them are totally technology first. Step 1, deploy the tools. Step 2, mandate usage. Step 3, provide some basic training. Step 4, monitor the metric.
And escalate when the numbers are low. Yeah, it's a command and control approach that's built on a huge, flawed assumption that people will just adapt. But that assumption is breaking down everywhere.
It really is, because a training session on prompt engineering doesn't create trust. You can't mandate trust. A 40-page governance document doesn't create confidence for a manager who has to make a real-world decision based on an AI's output.
And the monitoring tools, they often just amplify the anxiety. It feels like surveillance, especially when you're already feeling insecure about your role. So the unintended consequence is that enterprises are optimizing the AI systems while completely under-engineering the human infrastructure required to operate them.
Okay, so that's the key phrase right there. Human infrastructure. It can sound a bit, abstract, so let's make it concrete. What are we actually talking about when we say that?
Right. First, what it's not. It's not another wellness app or a therapy program. This isn't about fixing the person, it's about fixing the system. Human infrastructure is the intentional design of the social, behavioral, and decision-making systems that let people use AI confidently and collaboratively.
Okay, so like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so instead of a manager judging an AI's output alone in a silo, you create peer calibration forums, places where teams can look at the outputs together and build a shared standard for what good enough even means. It replaces that isolated fear with collective confidence.
That makes sense. So you're creating a social fabric around the technology.
Exactly. Another piece is role narrative clarity. Don't just say, AI will make you more productive. That creates fear. Instead, say your role is shifting from execution to evaluation and exception handling. Here's what excellent evaluation looks like. You give people a clear vision of their future value. Or you create communities of practice for managers to share what's working and what isn't. So they're not learning in isolation. This is operating infrastructure.
And this brings us back to the mental health piece. Companies are asking, do we need new mental health programs to address AI anxiety? And that's just the wrong question. That phrase, operating infrastructure, is so important. It shifts the conversation from soft skills to a core business process. Can we dig into the guardrails you mentioned? How do you create them so they build trust rather than just feeling like another compliance hurdle?
Completely the wrong question. The mental health strain isn't the problem to be solved. It's the signal. It's the indicator that your adoption model is psychologically unsustainable. People are anxious because their expertise feels devalued. They're accountable for decisions they don't fully control, and they have no peers to calibrate their judgment with. The organization is just moving faster than trust can build.
So, what's the takeaway for leaders listening to this? What must they do differently if they're serious about this?
First, they have to expand their definition of transformation readiness. It's not just about having the right data infrastructure and platforms. It has to include human infrastructure. And that means diagnosing where fear and identity erosion are really blocking usage, not with anonymous surveys, but with structured conversations with the teams on the ground.
And then redesign the entire adoption process around pure learning and shared judgment. It can't be top-down. And you have to give managers safe spaces to calibrate decisions together, because they are the critical choke point, caught between executive pressure and team uncertainty.
Yes, and ultimately, it means making psychological safety a prerequisite for scale, not an afterthought you deal with later. Because the real risk that leaders aren't acknowledging isn't a technical failure. It's a workforce that no longer feels psychologically safe enough to adapt.
And that is a death knell for innovation. Anxious employees don't experiment. Uncertain managers don't scale change. Identity-threatened professionals will resist the very systems designed to help them. If your adoption plan doesn't account for human infrastructure, you're not just risking burnout, you're risking total adoption failure, right when your competitors are figuring it out.
And that's the missing layer we focus on at BuildMoat. It's about redesigning those operating models around trust and peer learning to move initiatives beyond pilots by tackling these human constraints. Because adoption doesn't fail in the code, it fails in that space between mandate and trust. And that mental health strain, that's just the signal that the real work hasn't started yet. That wraps today's episode of BuildMote. If this conversation helped you think differently about AI adoption, share it with a colleague who is in the middle of a transformation right now. You can find more insights, research, and details on our 30-day AI adoption pilot at buildmote.co.uk. And if AI is already live in your organization and you are under pressure to prove impact, our work is designed for you. Thanks for listening. We will see you in the next episode.